The orchard where time sleeps. The orchard lay at the far edge of the valley, where the mist curled low to the earth like a sleeping creature, and the hills rose in gentle humps as though they were breathing. Locals said the orchard was older than the town, older than the river, older even than the stones buried beneath the fields. They said its trees grew from seeds, scattered by a wandering spirit, or an ancient god, or perhaps time itself on one of its slower days. No one agreed which story was true, but no one questioned the orchard's presence either. It simply existed, dreamlike, unbothered, and possessing a quietness that felt sacred. No wind ever tore through its branches. Even in winter, when storms clawed at rooftops and thrashed the moors, the orchard remained still, serene, as though wrapped in a blanket of enchanted calm. The trees were tall, their trunks silvered and knotted like twisted ropes of moonlight. Their leaves shimmered in soft hues, jade and gold in the sun, pale as ash in the moonlight. And the fruit they bore hung heavy, glowing faintly, as though holding trapped fireflies inside their skins. It was said that anyone who stepped under those branches walked slower without realizing it. Their heartbeats softened, their breaths lengthened, their thoughts drifted into dream-colored currents. Not because the orchard wanted to trap them, but because it offered something the world rarely did: rest, the pure and ancient kind. Leora had been raised on stories of the orchard. Her grandmother had spoken of it like an old friend, someone gentle and patient, someone who listened. "If you ever get lost in life," she once said, brushing Leora's hair beside the fireplace, "go to the orchard. Time sleeps there. It won't chase you." Leora never truly understood the meaning until she grew older, until life tightened around her like vines, responsibilities, expectations, grief that lodged in her ribs like cold stones. After her grandmother passed, the house felt hollow, missing its warmth, its laughter, its soft humming in the morning. The world seemed to move faster without her, as though it were impatient. Days blurred, hours evaporated. Leora felt as though she were running in a wind that always pushed against her. So one quiet evening, when the valley glowed with the lavender tint of dusk, and the hills breathed in soft shadows, she walked toward the orchard. The path was narrow, lined with wild heather and whispering grass. A cool breeze brushed past her like a familiar hand, urging her onward. As she approached the orchard, the air shifted. The sounds of the world, birds, rustling leaves, distant water, dimmed, as though someone had turned the volume down. The silence was not empty, but full, thick as velvet, alive with a subtle humming beneath the surface. When she stepped through the natural archway formed by two bowed trees, it was like stepping through a veil. Her lungs expanded fully for the first time in months. Her heartbeat slowed. Her shoulders loosened of their own accord. Inside, the orchard was a cathedral of green and gold. Light filtered through the canopy in soft beams, drifting like dust stirred in a sunlit attic. The scent of apples and earth and warm bark wrapped around her, comforting as old blankets. Every tree seemed to watch her gently, as though recognizing her bloodline. Leora walked deeper until she reached the heart of the orchard, a clearing bathed in honey-colored light. A single tree stood there, older than the rest, its trunk thick and spiraled, its branches heavy with luminous fruit. At its base, nestled among the roots, was a stone bench engraved with curling patterns. Her breath caught. She knew this place. Her grandmother had described it countless times. The tree of the first dream, she would say. It was the first to grow, and the last to sleep. Leora approached the bench and sat. The stone was warm, impossibly so, as though someone had been sitting moments before. And then she noticed it, a small object resting in the moss beside her. Her grandmother's locket, the one that had been lost years ago. The one her grandmother said the orchard had taken, though Leora had laughed at the time. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. The metal was warm, softer than she remembered. She opened it. Inside, instead of the old photograph she expected, there was something else. A single seed, glowing with faint light, like the heartbeat of a firefly. As she held it, a soft wind stirred, the first wind she'd felt since entering the orchard. Leaves rustled overhead, forming a murmuring chorus. The branches swayed slowly, bowing toward her. She felt a tug behind her ribs, a pull that was gentle but insistent. It wasn't grief, it wasn't longing, it was recognition. A voice, familiar as lullabies whispered in childhood, filled her mind. Plant it, my Leora. Her breath trembled, and tears warmed her cheeks before she realized she was crying. Grandma. The orchard answered with a soft melody, branches tapping, leaves chiming together like distant bells. The air shimmered, bending the light until it seemed to swirl. Leora felt the presence beside her, familiar and warm, though she saw nothing. It was the kind of presence that sits quietly with you during sorrow, asking for nothing. Her grandmother had always said the orchard borrowed moments, borrowed time itself, so it could hold them safely, returning them when hearts needed mending. Leora knelt at the base of the ancient tree. The earth parted easily beneath her fingers, soft as fresh bread. She placed the glowing seed into the shallow hollow and covered it gently. As her palms pressed the soil, a pulse traveled through the ground, a soft, resonant thrum. The orchard stirred, leaves fluttered in waves, as though a breath moved through every branch. The fruit above her brightened, glowing amber and rose, colors cascading from tree to tree, in ripples like sunrise rolling across a sleeping world. Then the light gathered. It threaded through the air, curling like golden smoke, spiraling toward the clearing. Leora felt warmth wrap around her shoulders, a phantom embrace she would have recognized anywhere. Her grief cracked, not in a violent shatter, but in a slow, gentle unfurling, like ice melting under morning sun. She breathed out, and the breath trembled but did not break. "You're still here," she whispered. The air warmed. "I never left." The silence replied. Time loosened. It stretched. It sighed. For the first time in months, Leora felt herself breathe deeply, her chest expanding with something tender, something new and old, and luminous. She stayed until the moon rose, silvering the orchard in a soft, celestial glow. The trees no longer looked ancient or strange. They looked like guardians, like witnesses to every sorrow and every joy that ever touched the valley. When she finally rose to leave, the orchard felt different, or perhaps she did. Her steps were unhurried, her heart steady. At the edge of the orchard, she turned back. A single sapling had sprouted where she'd planted the seed. Small, delicate, glowing with a faint pulse of light. It swayed once, as though waving. She smiled, tears drying on her cheeks. "Grow well," she murmured. "I'll return." As she walked back down the path, the world seemed softer. The wind no longer pushed, time no longer chased. It simply walked beside her, gentle and unhurried. Behind her, in the orchard where time slept, the ancient trees whispered, and the new sapling glowed, a promise planted in the heart of stillness, where love lingered, unbound by clocks, untouched by loss, where time slept, but memory bloomed forever.